Special shout out to the guys at my screening of Oppenheimer who wouldn't shut up and would point at the screen anytime there was nudity. I really needed your commentary, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to tell that Florence Pugh has breasts. Anyway, yeah, I'm a little torn about this one. I could see this one dividing a lot of the general audience, but then again, everyone else seems to love it, so maybe I'm just an anomaly. Alright, before we get started, as always, a quick thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you enjoy the content I make and would like to offer your support, then for as little as $1 a month, you can get your name listed right here at the start of every video. Link to that is in the description below. And now, let's get into the actual review.
You are the man who gave them the power to destroy themselves. And the world is not prepared. 7, 6, 5, 4.
Oppenheimer is the newest Christopher Nolan film and is a biographical film about the life of J. Robert Oppenheimer, who you might know as the father of the atomic bomb. This is a film I'm honestly not even sure how I feel about it as a whole. Now, I do think it's good, mostly, but at the same time... Okay, before I start rambling, let me tackle this piece by piece. First of all, give credit where it's due. This was an ambitious film. For a film that really at its core is a personal character study of a deeply flawed but interesting man, it also feels like a colossal epic in which you can sense the weight of what the characters are doing and the shift that creating a nuclear bomb could cause, and did cause. Combining those two elements could have absolutely fallen underneath its own weight, but thankfully Nolan, for all of his faults as a filmmaker, which we'll get to, is an incredibly talented filmmaker. Nolan at heart is a visual storyteller. That's where his strengths lie. And thankfully this movie has some real potent ones. Whether or not you agree with some of the artistic decisions he makes, with one in particular standing out that will definitely split audiences right down the middle, those decisions stick with you. And yeah, the Trinity sequence is handled masterfully. This scene is easily one of the best directed scenes of Nolan's entire career. The perfect build-up, the weight, the awe, the effects, the reactions are all handled flawlessly. It helps that the effects are done entirely practically without the aid of a computer, and it's all the better for it, and it gives the moment maximum impact. This is probably the best scene of the entire year so far, and it's worth the price of admission alone. But there are more than a few great moments. Like when Oppenheimer's giving a speech to his peers about the dropping of the nukes, and suddenly the applause completely vanishes from the room, replaced by the low hum of the bomb and the screams of its victims. Visually showing us how he feels without having him say what he's feeling, which is one of the things that film was made for. And thankfully the film does take full advantage of that, which is a credit to both Nolan's directing decision and Cillian Murphy's exemplar performance. Speaking of which, Cillian Murphy does Oscar-worthy work as the titular man of the hour, capturing the complexities and inner turmoil of a man fighting the world and his personal demons, sometimes simultaneously, and it is easily the best performance of his entire career. And amazingly enough, Nolan even managed to work in a couple of moments of dark humor that didn't really feel forced, but felt organically woven into the narrative, which helps provide a little bit of levity to what's ultimately a heavy story. However, with all that being said, Oppenheimer is a film that has problems, and unfortunately, I don't think they're insignificant. Oppenheimer is definitely a film made by an auteur, one of the very few left in the Hollywood industry. But the problem is that sometimes auteurs can get overly confident in the decisions they make, even in areas where they're at their weakest. And for Nolan, it's his screenwriting. One thing Nolan genuinely struggles with is conveying emotion via dialogue and character interactions, and that's no exception here. This is why Dunkirk was such a breath of fresh air, because he scaled back on what was his biggest issue and just focused on telling the story visually. But in Oppenheimer, that problem is back with a vengeance. This is easily Christopher Nolan's densest work, with Nolan seemingly trying to cram in every single piece of historical factoid or historical domain character that he can, no matter how minor, to the point where it actually starts to feel like homework. This is why we have streamlining in biopic films. You can definitely say not 1 second of this 3-hour film is wasted, and a lot of that is because this film is probably made up of like 300 to 400 scenes. I honestly don't think that's an exaggeration. There's only a handful of scenes where it actually feels like you're given a moment to stop and catch your breath, because this thing jumps around a lot. And I know that's Christopher Nolan's style, to use time as a jump rope, but I was kind of getting Wes Anderson vibes with regard to The French Dispatch. I'm starting to get worried that Nolan's getting too attached to his own style. And by that I mean telling the story out of order in ways that it really didn't need to. There's like a 3 to 4 minute time frame where the film has like 5 scenes from 5 different points of history interlaced where it keeps jumping around in between almost every shot. The editing in this film is really more distracting than helpful, and it kept jerking me out of the moment. The film's entire pacing throughout its 3-hour runtime is like that, barely staying in one scene for longer than 20 seconds at a time, which gets so strenuous to the point that I actually started to get tired. Not because the film was boring, but because it was exhausting. And this jumping around means that several characters get the shaft badly. Florence Pugh is acting her heart out, but her character is badly written. And I never felt like I understood her, what her motivations were beyond sleep with Oppenheimer. And when you find out what became of her character, it doesn't hit with the emotion that the film is trying to get you to feel. Emily Blunt as Oppenheimer's wife doesn't fare much better. And I genuinely think she's not even in this film for half an hour. And 10 minutes of that is just sitting behind Oppenheimer as he testifies before a committee. What I know about her character is that she's a drunk, she's vindictive, and she's not that good of a mother. At least, I think that's what they were trying to get across. Again, I just couldn't get a handle on her character because I was only getting snippets of it. And I also didn't feel the weight of their relationship. Their meeting up to their marriage is horribly rushed and handled clumsily. And this film is filled to the brim with a cast that walk through like a turnstile. Benny Safdie, Rami Malek, Kenneth Branagh, Alden Ehrenreich, Alex Wolff, Casey Affleck, Gary Oldman, Josh Peck. And I'm not expecting every single character to be given like Shakespearean levels of depth, but I kind of expect more than just superficial characteristics to be their defining character trait, and at least more than a handful of characters. But really, the only 2 characters that we really get to know are Oppenheimer and Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Strauss, which, as a side note, is also a really great performance. Everyone else is just kinda there. So, Oppenheimer, in many ways, frustrates me. It's a movie I wanted to like way more than I actually did. I want to love this movie. I want to decipher it. I want for the pieces to click. But the way the film was structured, the density, some of the aesthetic choices just didn't do it for me. But I also don't want you to come away with the assumption that I didn't like this movie. Overall, I did enjoy it. Everyone's giving it their all, in front of and behind the camera. Nolan's visual style is immaculate, and he is directing the crap out of this movie. The performances are good, especially Cillian Murphy, and if nothing else, we do get a much more concrete understanding of the man who gave us the ability to wipe ourselves out of existence, and how that realization came to haunt him. It's really not a happy movie. I mean, obviously, given the subject material. I mean, the film intentionally draws parallels between Oppenheimer and Prometheus, so that's to be expected. But there is some fascinating stuff in here, from both a filmmaking and historical perspective. With all the footage they shot, I am convinced that there probably is a masterpiece in here. I'm just not quite sure that came through in the way it was presented. But who knows? Everyone else is praising almost everything about this movie, like citing this as one of the greatest films of the year and decade, and man, I wish I could say the same thing. I would love to be on the same boat as everyone else, and who knows? Maybe I will someday. Maybe I just need to go back and give it a second watch, see what I'm missing that everyone else is getting. But as of this moment, I would say the film is good, really good even. When it's at its best, it's downright masterful, including its climax and its powerful final moments. But those distracting elements really do start to wear it down and ultimately do it no favors. Oppenheimer gets a strong but reluctant half-full shot. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. I went in thinking this was going to be one of my favorites of the year. But yeah, ultimately I do recommend it. But I'll definitely let you know how I feel about it upon rewatch. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching. As always, if you want to see my early thoughts of any film I watch or to read more of my reviews, Make sure to check out my Letterboxd account. The link to that is in the description below. And make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any upcoming reviews. Have a good day, and I'll see you next time.